Hello, and welcome to the Alabama Public Health Training Network. I'm Brandon Vaughn with the Alabama Department of Public Health. Thank you for joining us today for our program, VENA Vision 2020, The Motivational Experience. If you have a question about anything being discussed today, please call or email during our broadcast. The phone number and email address are on your screen now and will appear again later in the program. Also, the handouts and evaluation are available online. You will need to register for this program in order to access those materials. Continuing education credits have been approved for registered dietitians, nurses, and social workers for this program. In order to receive credit for this training, you must watch the entire program, then complete and return the sign-in sheet and evaluation. While content may continue to be relevant, CE credit will only be awarded for 1 year for nurses and social workers, expiring on January 30th, 2021, and 3 years for registered dietitians, expiring January 29th, 2023. If you are watching this program on demand and want to receive a social work CE certificate, you will need to complete the social work test and send it in, along with your sign-in sheet and evaluation. If you're watching this program live, there is no social work test required. For social workers, if you're watching this program live, it qualifies for classroom hours. If you're watching on demand, it is considered non-classroom hours. Before we get started, I would like to introduce our presenters today. Janie C. Clay, Assistant Nutrition Director of the WIC program, and Kenneth Harrison, Workforce Development Program Coordinator. Welcome to you both. I know you have a lot of important information to cover today, so let's go ahead and get started with your presentation.
Thank you, Brandon. So today our objectives are to provide a basic introduction and history of VENA, which is an acronym for Value Enhanced Nutrition Assessment. Our next objective is to explain the motivational importance of providing the best possible VENA practices when counseling. And the third is discuss the ADPH core values, which Ken will so graciously do. And our last objective is to review and discuss VENA. Is it up or down? Oh. There we go. Could we advance to the next slide, please? So what is VENA? Again, VENA is an acronym for Value Enhanced Nutrition Assessment. VENA was developed jointly by the FNS, which is the Food and Nutrition Service, and the National WIC Association. So, you can advance, Ken. So what is VENA? To improve nutrition services in the WIC program by establishing standards for the assessment process used to determine WIC eligibility and to personalize nutrition education, referrals, and package tailoring. So why is VENA necessary? So the Institute, you can advance, Ken, sorry. The Institute of, you can go back. The Institute of Medicine came out with a report in 2002 which recommended that all women and children ages 2 to 5 who meet the eligibility requirements of income, category for dietary risk, and residency status should also be presumed to meet the requirement of nutrition risk through the category of dietary risk based on failure to meet dietary guidelines. So the Institute of Medicine came out with this report, and the FNS responded by developing VENA, and you can hit the next one, Ken. So the FNS, following this report, the FNS identified the need to develop a comprehensive nutrition assessment guidance, and out of this report, VENA was established. So what are the importance and the benefits of VENA? Why would we want to implement VENA into our practice, into our daily practice? So VENA serves to enhance the nutrition services of the WIC program. VENA also serves to ensure the integrity of the WIC program as a premier public health program. So what this does, it provides a basic framework for the provider to follow so that it protects the provider as far as time, and it also specializes and individualized plans tailored for the participant. So the importance and benefits that VENA has when it pertains to Alabama WIC is it will enhance our nutrition assessment process, it will empower staff by improving nutrition assessment skills, and most importantly, the staff and the participants are more satisfied when a plan is tailored for them as opposed to it being a generic plan. This is more personalized, more individualized, so that their goal belongs to them. This is their goal. This isn't our goal. And we'll get more into that in just a moment. So before VENA, what did an assessment look like in the WIC clinic? So the use of 24-hour dietary recalls were used. That was a very common practice. There were no presumed risk criteria. The tendency to focus on deficiency findings. So, for example, if a participant had low iron, the provider would direct that goal or direct that participant's attention to that low iron and potentially set a goal towards that. And we'll get into what that would look like post-VENA. So just keep that in mind. So focusing on deficiency findings, a deficiency may be low iron, just an example. Another pre-VENA, the primary focus on risk identification for eligibility. And another one, not always consistent with participant-centered services. It was more so geared towards a deficiency as opposed to what that participant really wanted to focus on for that goal. So post-VENA, it discontinued the use of diet histories. Dietary risk assessments were more qualitative as opposed to quantitative. So the difference between qualitative and quantitative is numerical. Qualitative is more categorical or descriptive, so you get more information. The difference in that, we can take the heights of 1-year-olds, but a categorical framework would, are they a boy or a girl? So after VENA was implemented, it became more qualitative, which provided more information as opposed to all quantitative, which is just numbers. Post-VENA, we presume risk criteria, positive approach based on desired health outcomes, not deficiencies, outcomes. That's the key word in this descriptor. So as opposed to focusing on that low iron, the participant may want to talk about increasing their water intake. So as opposed to the provider saying, hey, I see on your assessment that your iron is low. Would you like to set a goal around your iron being low? That participant, pre-VENA, that's the providers directing that participant to set a goal around their iron being low. But that participant, post-VENA, may not want to set a goal around their iron being low. They may want to increase their water intake. This is participant-centered. It's the provider's job to inform the participant that their iron is low, but if the participant chooses not to select that as a goal to focus on as an outcome, and that's okay. That's okay. Another post-VENA is continued risk identification with more emphasis on using info to personalized nutrition services. And the last one is participant-centered services. What does that participant want to discuss? What does that participant want to talk about today? Not what deficiencies I see throughout your assessment, or not pinpointing something in the assessment that the provider see as a red flag, but what does the participant see as important? You can advance, Ken. So you can go back to the next one, the last one. So VENA will help, in regards to WIC staff, use limited time to collect relevant nutrition assessment information. So we're not, the way Janie describes it, we're not out in the weeds. We're bringing it home. We're directing our attention to what the participant would like to discuss, which saves time, because we're not trying to find something for them to land on in regards to promoting a health outcome. We're more so focused on what does that participant want to talk about. They want to talk about increasing water intake. Let's talk about that. So it saves the WIC staff time. The staff are also able to use critical thinking skills to link assessment information to participants' individual needs and concerns. That's that personalized counseling. Plan a personalized nutrition intervention, engage participants in dialogue and goal setting, which is very important. Weave nutrition and diet as a common thread throughout the assessment. What you put in is what you get out. So that's what those are the benefits for our WIC staff, for our WIC participants. They experience a positive encounter. They receive information and services related to their individual needs and concerns. You can see a lot throughout this presentation that we say individual, we say participant, we say personalized. So we really want to drive that home because VENA is personal for that participant. VENA saves the provider as in time, but it really focuses on and personalizes that encounter for the participant. So the last descriptor, the participant feels involved in goal setting to improve their own health. Not what we want them to do as providers, but what does the participant want to focus on? Because it's their goal, it's not our goal. When they come to see us and they leave the WIC clinic, this is their goal. You're not going home to work on your water intake. The participant wants to focus on their water intake. So the next time you see them, you're able to introduce yourself, you're able to build off that goal. The last time we spoke, you stated that you wanted to increase your water intake. How is that going? How is that looking? That you want to make it that personal encounter to where the participant feels as though this is my goal, I'm going to do it. I feel like I can do it because she encouraged me to get there. Okay, you can advance, Ken. So VENA is motivational interviewing, basically. And motivational interviewing includes, you can see the acronym on the slide that says OARS. So the acronym OARS is short for open-ended questions, affirmation, reflective, listening, and summary of reflections. So that's what OARS is an acronym for. Motivational interviewing also includes active listening, critical thinking, collaboration, which is like teamwork. So view you and the participant as a team. You're the coach, they're the most valuable player. They're the star on the team because they are the ones who are going to win the game. We need them to win the game. But we as providers are like their coach. You coach the team to a victory, right? So we want to guide this participant to achieving their goals. And that also includes encouragement. And you can see this should be shown throughout the VENA counseling session. You should be using open-ended questions as opposed to closed-ended questions. You should be giving those positive affirmations. You're doing a great job. Keep going. Reflective listening, which is repeating back what that participant stated to you to show them that you are listening and you're listening to get into the situation with them as opposed to listening to respond. There's a difference. Ken is going to talk about that a little bit in his part of the presentation, but I really want you guys to focus in on listening to get into the situation with the participant as opposed to listening to respond. We don't have all the answers. Sometimes in counseling sessions, you can actually learn from the participant. So we need to listen at what they're saying in order to learn. So Ken is gonna take us just a little bit further into our motivational experience with VENA and when implementing VENA.
And we're gonna get back around to that listening skills here a little bit later in the hour. But first I want to say thank you again for allowing me to be part of your program. I'm Ken Harrison. I'm the Workforce Development Program Coordinator, and that's a mouthful. But as part of the Workforce Development Goal, the Strategic Plan 2019-2023 for the department, the Workforce Development Goal is to strengthen the performance and capacity of the ADPH workforce so that the ability to serve our customers increase. Now the key words there are so that the ability to serve our customers increase. And if you think about it, that is what the VENA experience is all about. I mean, every one of you, every single day is serving the customers of Alabama by adding value to their lives. You're impacting the lives of the people in Alabama, helping them have healthier lives. So let's look at the vision and the mission for the department.
And in this case, customers would be participants.
I'm sorry, yes, customers and participants, yes. So the vision for the department is healthy people, healthy community, and healthy Alabama. The mission is to promote, to protect, improve Alabama's health. So a little bit about myself. Prior to coming to the department, I worked in the corporate world. I worked for Hershey's Chocolate, I worked for AT&T, and I worked for Walgreens. And 3 great companies. They offered 3 great products and services. I'm still trying to wean myself off of Hershey's Chocolate, which I think that's a pretty fruitless effort on my part. But I worked with 3 great companies, and and I worked for the corporation. I worked for the shareholders. I worked for the stockholders. But since I've been with the department, I actually worked serving the people of Alabama. You work serving the people of Alabama. And, if you think about it, we earn a living helping people, helping our fellow Alabamians. And if that doesn't light a fire underneath me, then my wood is wet, as the saying goes. But it's no matter what capacity you are with the department. I'm a lot behind the scenes because I work in Montgomery in the RSA Tower. Part of my time I was in Morgan County all of last week, and I've come down to the districts. But a lot of you are on the front lines where the rubber meets the road. And no matter what capacity we're in, though, we're all the hands, we're the feet, and we're the heart of ADPH. And every single thing we do, no matter how small it is, a lot of times those small things we never see the consequences out of. But those small things we do, we might lift someone out of a ditch in their life. So everything we do can impact the lives of the people, and we can promote, protect, and improve the health of Alabama. Now, about 3 weeks ago, Dr. Harris sent out an email on our core values. And in that email, there was also a short video. And in that video, Dr. Harris talks about our core values, and some of them, we're already doing. But there's some of them we need to aspire to achieve, to add to our daily work life. And what they do, they actually represent all the great things we do. They tell people about what we do. They define us. They make a statement that we care. And if you think about a lot of the participants that come into the WIC clinics, we don't know what their world's like. They might have a lot of adverse situations in their life, but they might not have anybody in life that cares, and we can actually make a statement that we care. Now, another thing that Dr. Harris talks about is how we need to strive to weave every one of these core values into everything we do, no matter how small the task or how complex. We need to make sure we strive to weave these in everything we do in our daily work lives. So let's look at these individually. There we go. All right, the first one is excellence. We believe in providing the highest quality services to our clients. We believe that all clients should be served with compassion, empathy, fairness, and respect. Now, the first thing I notice when I'm thinking of VENA is 2 key words in that are in your I care model. That's empathy and respect. But also, when you think of excellence, our lives are full of choices, and we can actually make the choice to commit to excellence. And what that looks like is, we all might offer really good or even great customer service, but excellence is taking it that one step further. What can we do to take it to the next level? The next one is integrity. And integrity is, we believe our employees should be professional, competent, honest, and knowledgeable, maintaining the highest level of integrity, accountability, confidentiality, and concern for our clients. We believe in always striving to maintain the public trust. And what that tells me is there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. There's never the right time to do the wrong thing. We just need to do the right things all of the time. And everything we do, we need to do to the best of our ability in the given or the allotted time. And an example of that is, we all maybe on a Friday afternoon, it's been a long week, it might even have been a long day. And for you providers, you might be seeing your 14th or 15th participant of the day. But that person that walks into the clinic is a real person with a unique situation, and we have an opportunity to impact their lives. So every single person that walks into your clinic, as Dr. Harris says, you know, we have the opportunity to make the statement that we care. All right, innovation now. This shouts VENA all over it to me. It says, we believe that we should demonstrate the ability to adapt, to change, and to be flexible in our approach to solving problems and providing services. I mean, if you think about it, by using the VENA experience, our providers, we're developing great solutions for our participants, and we do that on a daily basis. So innovation, to me, just really shouts the VENA experience. And if you want to add anything, please let me know. And the fourth of our core values is community. We believe that we should build and maintain internal and external partnerships to address public health. Challenges included effectively utilizing resources, solving problems, and building relationships. And how many times a day do you have the opportunity to build relationships? It's all about building relationships, building that rapport with our participants. You know, the goal should be to have those participants, especially those that we see on a regular basis, to be excited to come in to our clinics because we care. And that's what we want. That's the end goal, is to have them be excited. Now, a moment ago, when we looked at excellence, our core value of excellence, I mentioned that two of the words were in your I care model. And it's I collect and assess with respect and empathy. And of course, respect and empathy are those two words right there. And would you like to expand on the I care model, or?
Sure. So we're collecting information throughout the assessment. And you can go back here. It's okay. We're collecting information throughout the assessment, and we implant that information in to later on help the participant get to a goal or focus in on a goal. When we assess, we're collecting information throughout that assessment, so we want to assess correctly and ask the correct questions throughout our time with the participant. Respect. Regardless of what they look like, regardless of what they have on, regardless of any outside factors, they made it to the clinic. We're speaking with them in person, so we need to get past that first layer of whatever they may look like and speak with them with respect. Everyone deserves respect. Empathy is getting into that situation with them again. So there's a difference between empathy and sympathy. And we have the chance up to 15, 20 times, however many participants you see in a day, including families and children, to impact one life. We have 15 to 20 chances a day to change one. If we can just change one life or help one participant reach their goal, I think that's a pat on the back. It's exciting to me as a dietitian to know that I'm working for a program who provides services for individuals and participants of Alabama. But at the same time, if you think about the number of contacts we make with people throughout the day, the people of Alabama, I mean, to have 15 to 20, and not including how many districts we have, how many providers we have, if you multiply that number by the amount of districts, the amount of clinics, the amount of providers we have, look how many lives we're touching every single day. We're not just a program that provides formula. We're not just a program that provides food. We're a program that provides nutrition education. And on top of that, we're giving you the respect and the empathy. And we're making that contact with you to help you better yourself eventually, down the line, set a goal. How awesome is it to have a teammate, a coach, to help you reach a goal? If you did it alone, it would be quite difficult. But if you have someone that you can see, you know, every 3 months or every 2 months or however often you come into the clinic, to make it feel like you have someone, you know, kind of pushing you towards it. Drink that water. Go for that 30-minute walk after you eat. Eat that apple as opposed to that bag bag of chips. It's almost like this little small voice talking in the back of your mind, saying, you know, make that healthier choice, because that's what we're here for. We're here to help them. I spoke with Ken a lot about hitting the reset button with VENA, because that's exactly what it is. No participant is the same. You can see throughout the beginning of the presentation that we talked a lot about personalizing individuals, and personalizing that goal to fit that individual. So when we interact with the participant, a mom, postpartum, prenatal, or a child, they're all different people. So when they come into your office, you have to hit that reset button. The conversation should not be the same for every single person that you're seeing. It should be a different conversation, because this is a different person. This is a different participant. So if you think of eye care as I'm hitting the reset button to implement eye care once more. I'm hitting that reset button to implement eye care once more. Now, it may sound tedious, but think back to pre-VENA versus post-VENA. It saves you time when you focus on what the participant wants to talk about, as opposed to what you want them to talk about.
And you know, that one you mentioned, you know, what if you can change the lives of one person every day out of 15? And think about that one person. That one person is not going to go home and keep it to themselves. They're going to share it with others. They're going to share it with other family members, maybe their friends. So you can really start something that could be contagious out in the field. I mentioned earlier that I worked for Walgreens for a while. And with Walgreens, we had a lot of challenging customer service situations that happened. We had a lot of people coming into the door that were probably had been at a doctor's office for a while, or maybe sitting in the emergency room for several hours. If you've ever been in an emergency room, you know how that is. They might not have felt well, but they came into the pharmacy and the prescriptions weren't ready. And of course, they might not have been happy, but 90% of the times it wasn't ready. It was generally not anything that was a control of the pharmacy. They were all external factors. The doctors might not have sent in the prescriptions yet, or the prescriptions were incorrect, the dosage, or there was adverse reaction to medication on there that they're taking. Maybe there was an insurance issue. But the challenge we had, we were the face they saw, and it was how we reacted to them in their situation. And it was all about delivery. And I encouraged them, and which I'm going to encourage everybody here as well, to treat every single person that walks in that door that talks to you as if it was a loved one, as if it was a family member. And if we treat everybody like that, I think we can take it a level higher. Okay? So we talked about, I know that Janie has already covered a lot of this. You know, you talk about being participant-centered, and that's actually just, you know, again, you know, approach from the participant's point of view. You know, what they want to accomplish that day. Now, you look at the positive approach. From the moment, on the VENA experience, from the moment that participant walks in the door to the moment they leave, they see nothing but smiling faces. They see someone who's asking the questions, asking the right questions, assessing their situation, and coming up with individual solutions. Help them drive those individual solutions, practicing great listening skills. And when they walk out that door, they have an action plan and they have hope. And the last point is way to better provide the most relevant nutrient guidance. Now, I know that our providers are challenged with the opportunity. You know what direction you want your participants to follow. You know what solutions that they need to follow. But to have them take a part in that, to have them take ownership is a key. Help them feel like they're developing those solutions. Because I know if I take ownership in something, the likelihood of me completing that goal is going to increase dramatically. And it's the same thing with our participants. We need to have them take ownership of it, which leads to the next slide. There we go. The goals that VENA sets are SMART goals, and we probably heard this, you know, for quite some time, which are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. The key to any goal we have, no matter what it is, and I talk about this in our work-life balance class, is we can have the greatest plans in the world, but if there's not commitment and there's not follow through, then all they are is just great plans. So again, that's why it goes back to that ownership piece of when the plans are being developed. We need to really encourage and guide the participants to feel like that they're the ones developing the plans. So I want to talk a little bit about the difference between accountability and ownership. Accountability comes from extrinsic motivation. They're the motivation, the external drivers where maybe the consequences versus rewards. Versus ownership. Ownership comes from intrinsic motivation, the internal drivers such as achievement. Basically, accountability is doing what you're supposed to be doing because that's what's expected of you. Ownership is doing what needs to be done because that's what you expect of yourself. So we're going to just look at a couple of different things. We're going to go through these pretty quickly. These are, in looking at accountability, some of the things we see in accountability is complying with rules, showing up on time, discipline if necessary, meeting deadlines, treating people with respect, and keeping their feet to the fire. Again, these are things that are expected of us. The things that we expect of ourselves, though, this is where we move into that excellence we talked about in our core value, is asking the right questions. Because if we're asking the right questions, we're able to come up with those second and third level probes, dig deep, and find out exactly what we need to do to accomplish a task. It's caring. I've mentioned that a couple times before, and that is such a big part of what we do. Loyalty. My favorite is working with passion, and I think if you work with passion, your participants are going to see that in you. Living values. Being emotionally present. Emotionally present is showing empathy with the customers. Honoring people's dignity. We go back to talking about respect. And then also putting their hearts into the work. And I mentioned that earlier. We're the hands and the feet and the heart of ADPH. So in looking at all of that, I feel it's safe to say that, ownership is all about attitude. Would you agree with that? Lou Holtz, I don't know if many of you are familiar with him. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz, right now, he's probably in his 80s. You see him on ESPN or College Game Day. He's a commentator. But he's best known for being a head coach. Lou Holtz was a head coach for about 30 years at many different colleges. He served two different in the SEC. I'm a big SEC fan. I'm not going to say what loyalty because I don't want to divide the room. But he coached at Arkansas and South Carolina. But Lou Holtz is most notably known for his tenure at Notre Dame. And when he was at Notre Dame, he did what no other coach had ever done before. He took Notre Dame to 9 consecutive New Year's Day bowls, and this was before the college championships that we have now. But to take them to 9 consecutive, that was unheard of. As a matter of fact, they built a statue on Notre Dame's campus, and it has 3 words that Lou lived by, and that is truth, commitment, and love. Not only he lived by them, but he coached by those. But Lou, if you ask Lou about that statue, he'll say, well, they built it because the pigeons need a place to land. But the thing about Lou, he grew up with a lot of adversity in his life, which probably a lot of our participants do. And I'm not going to go into much detail on that, but he had a tremendous adversity in his life. But the thing that saw him through, that made him be the success he was his unmistakable positive attitude. So let's look at this quote. Ability is what you are capable of doing. Motivation determines what you do, and attitude determines how well you do it. If you think about it, there's only 7 colors in a rainbow, but look what Michelangelo did with it. There's only 7 musical notes, but look what Beethoven did with it. It doesn't have to be complicated. As long as we have the right attitude, we can do a lot of great things. So, have you ever wondered why it's maybe so easy to work with some people and maybe not so easy to work with other people? Happens on a daily basis, probably. So, it's all about understanding behaviors, and I'm going to give a little prompt to work life balance, workforce development right now. We offer a class that we're going to be rolling out soon called Understanding Yourself, and it talks about behaviorals, and please be looking for that in about 2 or 3 weeks. Thank you for the time to do that. But in understanding behaviors, if you know how your behavior is and the behaviors of others and the actions related to those behaviors, sometime if we can change or adapt our behavior to others, it can impact a relationship. It can increase the effectiveness of that relationship. And that's one thing I think we need to strive for. Dr. William Marston, he was a lawyer, he was a psychologist, he was an inventor. He invented the polygraph test, which is the lie detector. He also created Wonder Woman and the golden lasso of truth. But he also developed the My Everything disc profile, which you might be familiar with. And his theory, which you see on the screen right here, his basic theory is that everyone is born with genetic traits. We're also born with core personality. And you add in the environment that we grow up in, you add in our friendships, our jobs, our family, and that shapes your behavior. And the thing about behavior is a choice. We do have a choice to change our behaviors. So let's look and see what behaviors are, observable obviously. That's our mannerisms, that's our body language, our facial expressions. We face so many situations throughout the day, so our behavior can change throughout the day many times. We can be flexible. They're based on our thoughts and beliefs, but the most important thing on the screen is that they're adaptable. And again, if we make the choice to change them, we can adapt our behaviors to increase relationships, to impact relationships. So let's look at what an effective person is. Effective people understand themselves and how their behaviors affect others. They understand their reactions and also how those reactions might affect your relationships. Effective people concentrate on the things that they do well. Effective people have positive attitude. Think of all the effective people you know in your life. And I would be willing to say that they all have positive attitudes. And again, there's that word adapt. We have to be able to adapt our behavior to increase the relationships. You might all have seen this before. It's an iceberg. Well, the reason I put this on here is because icebergs reflect people. On an iceberg, we only see 5 to 10% above water. So that means 90 to 95% of the iceberg is below water. And the same thing with people, other than our physical characteristics. All we see is 5 to 10%, and that is behavior. Now, I don't know if any of y'all have ever, maybe in school, you looked at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And this is what this is really based on. We all have our basic needs for survival, obviously food and drink and other needs in our life. Then we have our values and beliefs. And we all start developing our beliefs around the age 5, 6. So if you're only exposed to SpongeBob beliefs at age 5, 6, not exposed to any traditional beliefs, then you're going to be raised on SpongeBob beliefs. So at age 5 or 6, we start developing our beliefs. And then we have our feelings and thinking. Now, all of these things are underwater. All of these things are internal. These are things that we don't see, but what we do see are the behaviors. Now, when we meet people, and when we start to develop a relationship, we actually go through a process of 5 different steps. And unfortunately, in most relationships, and this is really indicative of workplace relationships, we never get past the first step, which is judging. And when we judge someone, we actually create that judgment in less than 1 second. And that's our first impression of someone. And unfortunately, like I say, most workplace relationships never go past that judgment. So the next one is understanding, and this is where the behaviors come. This is understanding your behavior, understanding their behaviors, and how they affect each other. The next stage is respecting, and this goes back to our core belief of excellence, where we're talking about respecting others. The 4th step is appreciating. You know, we might not agree with the other person, might not agree with their opinions, but we can appreciate that they do, have their own opinions. And the 5th stage is valuing, and we very rarely have people in our lives that we actually get down to the 5th stage, and those are usually our loved ones, our family members. But the challenge that we face is, how do we get past that first stage of judging? Because most workplace relationships never surpass that. So as you're meeting with your participants, try to move past that judging stage, and start understanding the behaviors. And a lot of the questions in the VENA experience will do that for you. It really digs deep into their situation. And we always need to respect everybody, no matter what the situation might be when they come into our clinics, and also appreciate that they might have different needs and different opinions that we do. But we need to strive to kind of work down that ladder as far as valuing our participants, and we all need to do that in every aspect of with the department.
The word that stands out here for me, Ken, and for, I'm sure, our WIC providers and our WIC staff, is appreciating. We need to strive to not make the participants seem as if it's an inconvenience for us, and appreciate them for showing up, appreciating them for their time, appreciating them for sharing information with us so that we can team up with them to help them reach their goal.
Absolutely.
So my favorite word on this slide would be appreciating.
And if we can get down to that stage, I think that's going to really do a lot as far as building trust with our participants as well. Okay, Jim Rohn, if you're not familiar, Jim Rohn was a keynote speaker. He was also an orator. And in his quote, he says, "Take advantage of every opportunity to practice your communication skills so that when important occasions arise, you will have the gift, the style, the sharpness, the clarity, and the emotions to affect other people." If you think about it, what a unique opportunity we all have to touch someone's lives by something as small yet as powerful as words. It's a great thing. So we're going to talk about communication here for a little bit. And I'm going to start off talking about the basic model of communication. And this figure here, someone said it looks like Stonehenge, so please don't get caught up in that. But in the basic model of communication, you obviously have a sender. And the sender has a message in their mind. They know that they want to communicate to the receiver, or maybe a group of receivers. They now choose the method of how they're going to send that. Well, is it going to be face-to-face? Is it going to be over the phone, a text message? Is it going to be on social media? Just so many methods. The world is shrinking. We have so many different ways to send our message. And then you have the receiver. And the key is to transmit that message that we want to send, and it to be interpreted in the way that it's meant to be. It's basically encode versus decode. But a lot of times, the way that message is interpreted is inaccurate. And that's because we have a lot of barriers. Now, some of the barriers are because the sender sends a message, the way that they would receive the message. Or maybe it's the receiver. The receiver receives the message in the way that they would send it. It could be a lot of distractions. It could be body language. There's so many different barriers. So what are some of the barriers that we're seeing out there in the WIC clinics?
So I would say that a barrier is getting stuck in that rut of seeing, when we're busy and we kind of get into the flow of, seeing participant after participant. But I think if we just take a deep breath in between participants and hit that reset button, that it would provide a little clarity. Now that we have eWIC, we are doing things electronically more often than none. And I think we're seeing that as a barrier, and we're working through those processes now. But now that we're electronic, we're sending those messages not so much face to face, but more so over the telephone or via the computer. So we have to work through those processes.
And first I want to congratulate all of you on your transition to eWIC. I know that was a big program. So, but absolutely, we all face barriers in communication. This is a model when we're actually in a face-to-face communication with people. We got to build believability. We got to build credibility. And this model was developed by Mehrabian, and he was actually a recognized expert in communication. And this was kind of eye-opening to me, that when we're establishing credibility in a face-to-face conversation, 55% comes from body language, and 38% comes from tone, and only 7% from the words that we say. I would have thought that would have been almost the opposite of that. So it's just so important that the body language that we have, and we're going to talk about body language here in just a couple of minutes, but all three of those work together. The verbal obviously is, what we say. The vocal is how we say it, and the visual is our body language, and they must all work together for a message to have the most credibility, the most believability. And I know that we talked about earlier about you kind of talk a little bit more about what factors impact these messages.
So when you think about VENA, one of the key points in VENA is active listening. And active listening is smiling, introducing yourself, not letting the computer be a barrier between you and the participant, so that that open form of communication is present. So when we think of VENA and we put it into this verbal and nonverbal communication, if you think back to the chart that had judging first, if a participant walks in and we don't introduce ourselves, we're both judging immediately, because the participant walks in and just sits in the chair, and in their minds they may be thinking, well, don't I deserve a hello? Or don't I deserve to know who you are or what we're going to do today? So that goes into that visual side, that body language side. But if a participant walks in, they're more likely to not present that judging manner if you introduce, hi, I'm Janie, welcome to the WIC clinic, it's so great seeing you, how are we doing today? So it gives you that sense of, I belong here. It's okay for me to be here. I'm not wasting my time. So all of those factors play a part in our message when we think about VENA, with the active listening, the affirmations, the building rapport. All of that just flows into one. And to know, when you showed that chart, it was actually really surprising to know that words are only 7%. Because we talk a lot.
Well, and that goes back to that first impression, because a lot of first impressions are made on body language.
That's right. But with active listening, you're asking the open-ended questions so that the participant is driving the conversation. That's what being a friendly really is, so that the participant is giving you enough information to help guide them and to help set them a goal that's attainable. Help them set a SMART goal, as opposed to, since words are only 7% of that communication, we're not just talking. Absolutely. We're actively listening. We're smiling. We're building rapport. We want them to come back. We appreciate them for being there. So That was a really great, I love that chart, and that was a really, really great point that you made, Ken. Thank you for that.
Sure, absolutely. So an important part of communication, one sometimes we might not think about, is choosing the right words to say. And by choosing the right words to say can either convey the message the way that it's intended to be, or the message might be perceived in the wrong way. I mean, we might have intent to have a positive message, but the perception sometime might be negative. And look at some of the negative languages, can cause harm when none was meant. They can create conflict, can cause mistrust and destroy relationships. The positive language, on the other hand, can create a more effective message, allows for positive results, builds more solid and trusting relationships, and increases professionalism. And let's kind of look at an example here. The very first one here, and how many times have you heard this? I'll get back with you as soon as possible. So, I mean, how does that make you feel? Probably not too good. If someone tells me I'll get back with you as soon as possible, I generally think, well, I'm probably never going to hear from that person again. Or maybe they don't really have their focus on me and actually putting me at the top of their list or somewhere near the top of the list. But a more positive way that we can say that is maybe, I don't know the answer, but I will get back to you by the end of the day. Does that sound better?
The key is time. Putting a timestamp on it, as opposed to leaving that open-endedness. Getting back as soon as possible could be in 3 months. It could be in 2 months, or whatever you want it to be as the receiver over the phone or the conveyor of the message. But it gives you an endpoint, and it gives the participant an endpoint to know that I will hear from her by the end of the day.
Absolutely. Well, let's look at a couple other examples here. It's department policy. I don't know. We've always done it that way. I'll try to take care of that today. Just calm down. I heard that a lot at Walgreens. That's not my responsibility. So all of these can convey negative language. So when we're making statements or conversations, just think about the language that you're using and make sure it's a positive language, as Janie said, with the timestamp. Because if a lot of times, we don't know the answer to what we need to give them for the solutions. And in a lot of our training, we have parking lots. We have just for that reason, so we know we'll get back with someone. So it's really important that you concentrate on having positive language. And not only is it important to choose the words correctly, it's how we say things. Now, the first thing we're going to look at is pitch. And do we have any singers in the group? Well, I don't know if I sang. I know if I sang, I'd probably empty the room. But you probably, if you've ever had any training, they talk about diaphragm and singing from your diaphragm. And if you lay on, well, they say that you can really test your diaphragms laying down on your bed and actually taking deep breaths, and when you feel that, you feel the diaphragm. But the pitch, if it's real high, sometimes that can convey a lack of confidence. So just kind of watch your pitch. Inflection, inflection can break up monotone in a conversation. It can actually change the direction of a statement. If we emphasize certain words, you might have the statement and put an emphasis on 5 different words, and you could have 5 different meanings of the statement. So inflection is another way to convey your messages. Rate. It's recommended that a person speak no more than 2 words per second. Now down here in the South, it's probably half of that. But you might be in a hurry, you might have a lot of participants you're seeing, you might be a little behind, but make sure we're speaking at a rate where our customers can understand us. And last is volume. I mean, we need to watch our volume. Sometimes if we speak at a very high volume, then that comes across as bossy. If we speak at a very low volume, then that might show a lack of confidence. So just kind of watch your volume as you talk with our clients. And diction. You know, a lot of times we have words in our vocabulary that we use that we might have problems pronouncing, and if we do, just try to avoid those words. That's the best way to watch that. So we talked about body language a couple of minutes ago. The first one is all important to me is eye contact, obviously, and to me, that conveys whoever I'm talking to is truly listening to me. I mean, if you're ever in a doctor's office or something, they're always looking down at a chart, but if they're eye contact with you, you know that they're listening to you. And eye contact can do a lot of different things. If you're presenting to a group of people, if you ever have, if you know, the recommendation is never to look at one person more than 3 seconds. But unless you're trying to get someone to answer a question, if you ask a question and nobody ever answers it, you can just stare at that one person and hopefully that'll make them feel uncomfortable and answer the question. I'm just kidding. Sorry for picking on you. But eye contact is very important, and it can tell a lot of things too. I mean, if someone breaks eye contact that you're talking to and they actually kind of look to the left over your shoulder, that's a sign that they might not be telling the truth. There's a lot of things can be done in eye contact, but really keep strong eye contact. Facial expressions, that can do a lot for us. Be very cognizant of your facial expressions, because a lot of times in your conversation, when you're concentrating, you might have kind of a confused look on your face, maybe even an angry look. And we don't do that on purpose, but if we're concentrating, you know, our facial expressions can show a lot. So just be aware of those. Handshake. Now, I don't know, you might not do many handshakes throughout the day, but if you do have the opportunity to handshake, proper handshake obviously is to have eye contact while you're doing that handshake. Straight arm, full hand grip, no more than 3 shakes. Have you ever shook someone's hand that just holds it and holds it and holds it? That's so distraction. I can't stand that. So just no more than 3 shakes on a handshake. Okay, and Jenny has mentioned questions, and this is just so important, the type of questions. We're going to look at 4 different types of questions. Obviously, there's the close-ended, and those are the ones that we're just trying to generate facts, as did, can, have, you know, what's your date of birth, address. Those we're just trying to find fact. But the ones that we're actually trying to dig and find information, which actually turns the conversation over to the participant or the other person we're talking to, are the open-ended questions. That's where you're going to find all your information. The way I look at it, think about it, if a loved one of yours was about to have open heart surgery, and you could only ask that heart surgeon one question, what type of question would you ask? Would you ask a closed-ended? Or would you ask an open-ended question, one that you can find the most information? Or say maybe you have a child and you're having someone babysit, you know, or one question to ask, what type of question? Or maybe you're a supervisor and you're interviewing someone for a position in your department, only had one question. It's going to be open-ended because you're going to want to find out as much information as you can from that person. 2 other type of questions we have are clarifying, which, and that's just really to make sure that you're gaining accurate information. And then there's confirming, and that's just to make sure that you've successfully communicated what you were talking about.
And I want to point out the confirming question type, and the example that Ken has is what I think you said. That goes into that reflective listening and summarizing that reflection. So you're repeating back what the participant stated to make sure that you properly understand, so you're not getting ahead of yourself or getting ahead of the participant before they convey what they actually mean. So that's that reflective question that I think is really, really important.
Are there any type of, or any specific questions that you would recommend that your providers ask on every single conversation?
Because every individual is different, and these counseling sessions are individualized and personalized, there's no one way or no one question that will give you everything that you need, but what Janie likes the most is tell me more.
Here we go.
Tell me more about you wanting to increase your water intake, or tell me more about the time difficulty in prepping meals, or tell me more about little Susie watching 5 hours of TV a day. So tell me more gives them that opportunity to expand on what's really going on, as opposed to, well, we only recommend 5 hours a day and going to the next question. But if you really want to hone in on it and really have them to, focus on what's going on to trigger to say, well, maybe that's a red flag. Maybe I should not let little Susie watch 5 hours a day because she's asking about it. So I want you guys to remember, that's personal. That's Janie's favorite VENA question, but you are happy to select your own open-ended VENA question.
All right. Okay, so I love this picture. So everything I do, every session you ever come to with workforce development, you're probably going to see this picture. That just makes me feel good. Stephen Cupping, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He was, again, a keynote speaker, and he was an author, and he wrote a very popular book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And this, as a matter of fact, this quote that he has is reflective of one of his habits, and that's seek to understand first, then seek to be understood. And this quote is, most people do not listen with the intent to understand, they listen with the intent to reply. Now, that is so true, and to me, that's so powerful. And that's one thing that we really need to focus on, is to be able to seek to understand. Mm-hmm. And we're going to go into a little bit more depth on that here in just a moment.
And that goes into what I stated earlier. Active listening is listening to join them in the situation, as opposed to listening to respond. Because more than likely, we know what the recommendations are. I don't want to say that we have all the answers, but as providers, we've seen these situations time and time again, so we know just about what's going on. But every individual is different. That's why they're called individuals. So when they are explaining, when you ask these open-ended questions, they're explaining what's going on, and you want to join them as the provider in the situation, as opposed to listening just to tell them what the answer is or what the answer should be. So it takes that wall down between you and the participant to where you join her on her side, as opposed to the wall being there and you have all the answers and she doesn't. So that you really want to hone in on that, listening to join them as opposed to listening to respond.
And absolutely, and to add to that, the slide that's before us now, hearing versus listening. Webster's dictionary says hearing is the process of perceiving sound. Listening is the process of making sense out of what we hear. And, again, we need to really target listening. And with listening, though, there's a lot of challenges. The first, of course, is distractions. And, distractions can be anything as minor as you might have a habit of,
or a baby crying.
A baby crying. It could be internal. It could be external. It could be tapping your fingers. It could be people sometimes talk with their hands way too much. I do sometimes, maybe. Guilty of that. The keyboard. There's so many different things can be distractive. We need to give 100% of our attention to truly listen. Listening patterns. That's actually trying to finish the sentence for the person. You might even do that vocally. You might even, as they're talking, finish the sentence with them. But listening patterns also can be just assuming things, because if maybe you have a participant that you've seen before and they come into the office, or it might be a coworker that has maybe a negative attitude, you're normally going to associate the conversation in a negative listening pattern. So we need to avoid listening patterns to the best as we can to truly listen. The one that I think a lot of people are really guilty of, including myself, is the conversation in our head is greater than the conversation we're listening to. And that means that we're constantly thinking ahead. We're thinking about how we want that conversation to go. So we'll get a little bit more in detail on that here in just a moment. So I'm going to move on to the next one. And the myth of multitasking. And to be able to effectively listen to someone, 100% dedication has to be to that person. How many guilty, other than myself, do emails while you're on the phone? And you truly are not listening to that person you're talking with. And have you ever been in a conversation with someone while you're having the conversation, they're actually texting? We see a lot of different things, but we got, or somebody might be writing down, but to truly effectively listen to someone, we really need to be sure that we're listening to them and not multitasking. You might be up against a very short time restraint. You're trying to type as they talk. But to listen effectively, we really need to pay attention to what they do and try not to multitask.
I think our biggest distraction, Ken, is going through the questions and the participants. So we ask them a question and we're typing at the same time.
Okay.
So we're trying to multitask while charting, but it's okay to stop, tell the participant, give me just a second, let me finish writing this, and then turn to them and finish that conversation. Finish listening to what they have to say, because there is information that we have to get through our assessment. And to make that VENA friendly, finish the assessment that you're trying to complete or the screen that you're trying to complete, turn to them, ask the question, get the information, and it's okay to say, give me 1 second, is it okay if I finish charting this? And because we have to get information from them in order to set a goal and complete the counseling session, but at the same time, we don't want the computer and charting and typing to be that distraction in between that open communication that we're trying to have.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Okay, we want to talk about what active listening is, and I know Janie has mentioned that many times. One thing is, the first thing we need to do is focus and, again, get those distractions out of our heads. The second thing we need to do is to show, and this can be done in many ways. Of course, there's eye contact. A lot of people, when they're engaged in a conversation, actually lean in a little bit. A lot of people nod to acknowledge what they're saying, maybe a couple of but showing that we're listening. And we mentioned this before, to clarify, to say those clarifying statements. Could you repeat that, please? And finally, to me, if someone paraphrases what I said, I know that they're truly listening to what I'm saying. So those are 4 steps, 4 easy steps to remember right there. Focus, to show, to clarify, and to paraphrase. And we've gone through some of these barriers. I won't spend but a second on this, but of course noise. And noises can be external as well, things we can't really control. It might be a train going by our building or horns blowing on the outside, but just a lot of things that might be external that we have no control over. But those that we can, we need to make whatever effort we can to reduce that as far as being a distraction. And the same with the distractions. Interruptions, if you have every client or every participant is important that comes in your door, and I would make every effort I can to make sure that you don't have incoming phone calls, or if you are anticipating them, then you might need to reschedule that meeting, because we need to make sure we reduce the interruptions if we can, if possible. And unfortunately, sometimes, hopefully not at work, but in life, we might not even have interest in what the person is talking about. And that's always a barrier to active listening. So the average person speaks 225 words per minute and listens at 500 words per minute. Again, in the South, that 225 words might be a little less, but we still listen at 500 words per minute. But I want to go back and told this story before, back in October and November. At church, after church, I was talking to my preacher, and he was saying that part of their association, they did a study, and they did a study on exactly what this is, showing that, we speak at 225 and we hear at 550. And he said that their study showed that even though people might be listening to the sermon, that only 85% are listening at that true 225 words per minute. That other 275 words per minute is, well, what's for lunch today? You're thinking, what am I going to do? Am I going to go to a movie this afternoon, work in the yard? How about that ball game last night? You might be listening to that sermon, but your mind is still thinking about other things. We can do that, but to effectively listen to whoever we say, we need to drown out those other 275 words. And unfortunately, I was in that 85% this past weekend. So if we do all of these active listening skills, the key, and again, this is part of our core value of community, we're going to build relationships. We'll do all those things because we're going to build the trust of the people that we talk about. Now I'm going to talk about one more communication skill, and this is one that is sometimes it's easy, but sometimes it's very hard, emotions. So when we're in a conversation, sometimes there might be the person that we're talking to might say something that triggers something within us. And normally the way we react to that, they trigger something in us, an emotion arises within us, then we react. And a lot of times we say things that maybe we wish we could have pulled back and done differently. What we should strive to do in this situation is to stop. Once that trigger is reached, is to stop, to breathe, take a couple deep breaths, think about what you want that end result to be, and then respond. And as a matter of fact, I was actually talking to someone 2 days ago who told me this very thing happened to them, that they were in a conversation, someone said something to them, and they came very close to following the left column where they had emotion and reacted, but they stopped and breathed, thought about it, responded in a more professional way, and the outcome was very good. So that's a very important thing. We don't think about that a lot, but if you are triggered in a conversation, always stop to breathe and see. So how are we on time right now?
We still got time.
Okay. So we talked about, Janie's talked about what a provider-driven interview looks like versus a participant-driven interview, and we're actually going to show you what one looks like right now.
Yeah.
Okay?
Sure. Enjoy. So the first one will be a provider interview, provider-driven interview, and what this may look like is unseen. Hi, Ken.
Hey.
Welcome to the WIC Clinic. I'm Janie. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Great. So I was looking through your assessment, and I see that we're only eating fruits and vegetables about once a day. Is that true?
If I'm lucky sometimes, yeah.
Okay. The recommendations state that we should get up to 5. Do you think we can do 5 as opposed to 1?
I don't know. That'd be kind of going from 1 to 5. That might be a little hard.
Okay. Well, we want to focus on getting to 5.
Okay.
1 is it's really not enough because the guidelines state, and these are guidelines. It's not Janie. So we want you to try to shoot for 5. You think by the next time you come back, we can be up to 5 in our assessment?
Yeah, I can try. Yeah.
Okay. Do you like fruits and vegetables?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, great. So we should be able to achieve that.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay. And the second one will be a participant-driven interview.
So on that last one, I had my bag of Cheetos when I went home.
So a participant interview may look as such. Hi, Ken. I'm Janie. Nice to see you again.
Hey, yeah, good to see you.
Good. So I was looking through the assessment, and I see that we are eating about 1 fruit or vegetable a day. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, sometimes I'll have like a banana for breakfast.
Okay. Okay.
And
So what I'm hearing is the one fruit and or vegetable that we're getting is a banana. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. So is bananas our favorite fruit?
Yeah, it is. It is my
Okay.
favorite.
Okay. How would you feel if you maybe tried strawberries or blueberries? Have you considered trying one of those?
Well, I know blueberries supposed to be very healthy for you.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you do understand that fruits and or vegetables are healthy. Would you be open to increasing your intake throughout the day?
Yeah, I would, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so could you tell me a little bit about how you would go about achieving that?
Well, every now and then I will have cereal for breakfast, and maybe I could put blueberries on top of the cereal.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. So I want to commend you on thinking through your day and trying to incorporate more fruits and vegetables. Let's focus on vegetables. Have you tried any vegetables lately?
I had a can of green beans last night.
I commend you for trying green beans. Green beans are a vegetable, and they provide a great source of vitamins and nutrients. So that's great. If you want to stick with green beans, you're more than welcome, because this is your personal diet. I'm just here to help and assist and bring attention to our intake. How does that make you feel?
Feels good, yeah.
Feels good? Okay, so in regards to setting a goal, what would you like to focus on? I know we've talked about increasing fruits and vegetables. Would you be open to setting a goal around getting more into your day?
I would, because I want to get healthy, I do.
Okay, so
got a lot of things that I want to cut out.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you want to get more healthy, you want to cut out some things and maybe incorporate some things. So is it okay if we set a goal around that today?
Yeah, that'd be good.
All
Okay.
right. Let's do it.
All right. So, the first one obviously was provider driven. You see that she was going through basically a checklist. The second was participant driven, where Janie was asking me questions that helped me feel like that I was creating that goal, that helped me embrace that goal, and again, the likelihood of me to follow up on that, to follow through, to commit to it, is going to be bigger than versus, just say, I'll try to eat one more vegetable a day.
You can do it.
Yeah,
Just do it.
I can just do it, right. Does that make sense? Okay. So, when Janie talked to me about this program, I found an old, well, actually Janie gave it to me, but I was looking through it, and there was an old VENA Views. Do y'all look at the VENA Views? This is one from 10 years ago, 2010. It's hard to believe it's 2020. But in reading through these are 10 weak professional and customer service tips, but they all seem relevant to this day. Let's go through all of those, okay? And the first one is always remain professional with participants. Use active listening skills. Treat my coworkers as I would participants. Demonstrate empathy with participants. Be mindful of my nonverbal communication. Diffuse conflict from participants. Apologize when a mistake is made. Build and maintain rapport with participants, respect the diversity of participants, and pay attention to detail. Do those all seem like they're still relevant today? Are there any other tips that you would like to add to those?
Ken, I think these 10 tips really drive home the VENA-friendly environment that we are trying to stand on in our WIC clinics. So if we just hone in on these 10, I think it would greatly help us throughout the process.
Well, good. I'm going to, I mentioned Lou Holtz earlier, and I do have another Lou Holtz quote that I kind of want to, I guess, finalize my piece with. And the reason I put this one is this really, the providers that we have out there can make an impact in the lives of those that they see every single day. And the quote is, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. Now, if you're thinking in the eyes of those participants or of those patients that come into your office, you can be the catalyst. You can be the catalyst in their lives, how they respond to life. And that's what I challenge each of you with. I want to thank you for the opportunity again to be here today.
Thank you, Ken.
Would you like to add anything to that?
Sure. And this is just from a personal standpoint. I've gained the title of counselor over the last few months in my position upstairs. But when I think about this quote, Ken, and we talked about this very heavily when we were meeting, it really taps into why I became a dietitian. I became a dietitian to help the at-risk population, regardless of what they look like, how old they are, child, man, woman, baby, whatever it is. I became a dietitian to help someone else, to help the at-risk population, and to have the opportunity to interact with up to 15 participants in one day. And if I can have the chance to change one life out of those 15 that I see every single day, and I'm talking from a provider standpoint, to change one life, I mean, it gives me chills.
Yeah.
It gives me chills because all I want to do is impact one life, because these participants, we don't know for sure how often they go to the doctor. We don't know how often they visit, another provider, whether it be a dentist or a nurse or a doctor. But we know for sure one thing, that they are sitting in front of us at the WIC clinic. And we have that opportunity as dietitians, as nurses, as WIC staff, to impact their life with one, if we can just change one life, it would be so great. Maybe they haven't seen a smiling face all day, and when they walk into the WIC clinic, the clerk is smiling. It may or may not change their attitude, but we'll try. Mm-hmm. We'll smile at you and attempt to brighten your day in that one moment. So this quote is it's really great. And it's the perfect quote to end our motivational experience.
Absolutely. And keep in mind, I mentioned the core values earlier. There's also going to be some promotional items that are going to be coming out to everybody soon. And again, when you look at them, think again about weaving those into your daily life, and no matter how small the tasks they are, how complex they are, work those into your daily work lives, and we can make an impact in people's lives. We make that statement that we care, and that's what it's all about.
Okay. All right. Should be one more slide. Okay. And at this moment, we'll take any questions or comments that you guys may have.
I have a question.
Okay.
What is the benefit of asking open-ended questions?
Okay, so her question was, what is the benefit of asking an open-ended question? So asking an open-ended question gives the participant the opportunity to provide more information so that you are able to receive more information to guide them to the health outcome that they are aiming for. So we want to make sure, now you cannot avoid closed-ended questions because you're going to have to gather information from them. So open-ended questions weaved into closed-ended questions weaved in between open-ended questions is what you want to shoot for throughout your counseling session. So, thank you. Are there any others? Okay.
Can you give us some examples of how a provider would establish rapport?
Okay, that's actually a really great question, Jeannie. Her question was, how would some examples of how a provider would establish rapport. So the first point of contact is smiling, introducing yourself, letting them know what the goal of this visit today will be, and telling them that you guys are going to work together, to get to a common goal. So whatever that goal is that participant wants to focus on, let them know that at the, towards the end of the session, after you get the information that you need to complete your assessment, that you guys will work together to set that goal, and you're always here. You're like a personal cheerleader. So establishing rapport, that ensures that participant will have a positive experience when they come back into the clinic and return again, because if they don't have a positive experience, more than likely either they're going to go to another clinic or not return. So we want to make sure that we establish rapport so that they will come back to see us. Okay? All right. Are there any others?
No other questions?
Okay.
Well, thank you both. This concludes our program for today. I want to thank Janie and Kenneth once again for being here, and thank you for watching.